Close your eyes and imagine it's dawn in 1862. A bugle's call slices through the fog, boots sink into mud, and the scent of gunpowder mixes with damp earth. You are not a spectator, you are the soldier carrying 40 pounds of gear, stepping into the fiercest war in America's history. Do you have the strength to survive a single day in their place? The first sound is not the birds, it is the bugle. A thin metallic cry slices through the misty Virginia dawn, shivering across rows of canvas tents like an electric current. You flinch awake on a bedroll that is nothing more than a wool blanket spread over packed earth. Your back protests with a deep, unyielding ache, and for a heartbeat you forget where you are until the damp scent of wood smoke canvas and yesterday's sweat presses in. You are a Union private in the summer of 1862. And the day has begun, whether you wish it or not. Around you, the camp stirs like a single living creature. Men groan as they sit up, their breaths puffing in the cool air. Tin cups clink, canteens rattle, and someone coughs the deep cough of a chest cold that will never quite clear. The canvas walls of your tent glow faintly with early light, the shape of your rifle, a Springfield Model 1861 etched like a shadowed spinel against the fabric. Beyond boots shuffle over trampled grass, and the bugle call is answered by the low rumble of drums, the regimental heartbeat steady and unrelenting. You push yourself upright, brushing bits of dirt and straw from your trousers. Your joints protest stiff from another night on unforgiving ground. The air smells of last night's embers and the faint sourness of men who have gone too many days without a proper wash. The rations wagon creaked in late yesterday, but no extra blankets came with it. Your coat is still damp from the evening's dew. Somewhere down the company line, a man mutters a prayer while another curses the cold. A sergeant's bark cuts through the half-light, reveille up and at him. His voice carries the authority of repetition. He's said these words every morning for months, and will keep saying them until the war or his own body puts an end to it. You fumble for your haversack, feeling the coarse cloth against your calloused fingers. Inside waits a single piece of hardtack, hard as a paving stone, speckled with tiny black weevils that no longer surprise you. Breakfast. Outside, the eastern sky warms to a pale peach. Wisps of fog curl over the low ground like ghostly banners. Beyond the picket lines, the forest is silent, but every man knows that silence can hide an enemy just as easily as it hides a deer. Somewhere out there, Confederate soldiers are waking to the same damp chill, the same stubborn stiffness, the same endless war. You step into the open rifle slung awkwardly across your shoulder. The world is damp and metallic, the grass wet enough to soak your boots before the first footstep of the day's march. Smoke from a dozen campfires spirals upward, carrying the bitter scent of burning pine. Men cluster around the fires, tin cups in hand, eyes bleary. Someone has managed to coax a kettle to boil, and the promise of coffee, real coffee, not the acorn substitute, draws a silent crowd. A fellow private. Samuel nods in greeting, his breath a faint cloud. "Morning, brother," he says, voice rasped by camp dust and yesterday's smoke. He lifts his cup as if toasting survival itself. The coffee within is black as coal and twice as precious. You return the nod, too tired to speak, and let your gaze drift over the regiment. 100 men, each bound by the same hunger, the same fear, the same fragile hope that today will not be their last. Somewhere beyond the trees, a distant boom echoes a lone cannon or perhaps a farmer's wagon misheard. Every man stiffens for a beat, then exhales. The war feels close this morning, close enough that even the bugle seems to carry an edge of warning. Your stomach growls as you gnaw on the hardtack. It is tasteless and unyielding crumbs scattering like gravel. You dunk it in the bitter coffee, softening it enough to chew. The warmth of the drink seeps through the tin and into your cold fingers, a small comfort against the vast uncertainty of the day ahead. The sun lifts a little higher, gilding the tops of the tents and catching on bayonets stacked like silvered spires. Men begin to form ranks, their breath rising in thin, determined clouds. Today, there will be marching. There is always marching and perhaps more. The officers speak in low tones, scanning maps with brows furrowed. You cannot hear their words, but you can feel their weight. Another bugle call, sharper now, commanding. The regiment shifts, a ripple of movement like wind through wheat. You sling your haversack, adjust your blanket roll, and tighten the strap across your chest. The earth is cold beneath your boots, the sky streaked with pink and gray. In this moment between night and day, you feel suspended in a world where anything might happen. A sudden skirmish, a long march, a single musket ball that could end everything. You take a final swallow of coffee, the bitterness anchoring you to the present. Around you, men shoulder their rifles, faces set against whatever comes. The war waits beyond the tree line, and so does your next step. The coffee burns a path of warmth down your throat, but the comfort is brief. Breakfast in the Union Army is rarely more than a negotiation between hunger and endurance. You reach into your haversack for another piece of hardtack, its surface pocked with tiny black pinholes that signal the inevitable presence of weevils. Most men don't even flinch anymore. Some flick the insects aside with a pocket knife, others, too tired to bother, simply eat them for the scant protein. You've heard the jokes, a little meat with the bread. In truth, the hardtack's real enemy is not the weevil, but time. Each bite threatens to crack a molar, if not softened first, so you dunk it again in the bitter coffee until it turns to a paste that barely resembles food. Around the fire, the air hums with the low murmur of men waking fully. Tin cups clink as soldiers coax the last grounds of coffee into their mugs. Someone, Private Hennessy, produces a sliver of salt pork, its greasy smell instantly sharp against the damp morning air. He cuts it into strips and passes a piece to a friend with a grin, a rare gesture of generosity in a camp where every morsel counts. You recall the ration tables. A soldier's daily allowance is supposed to include salted beef or pork, a bit of sugar and hard bread. Reality often means half rations or substitutions, dried peas, when the meat runs out, desiccated vegetables, when the supply lines falter. Coffee, though, remains the holy grail. The Union blockade has starved the Confederacy of it, but for now, you still receive enough beans to grind and boil. Soldiers speak of it in reverent tones, as if it were both medicine and sacrament. You remember hearing about men who will trade nearly anything for an extra scoop buttons tobacco, even a spare pair of socks. One sergeant swears that during the Peninsula Campaign, a single cup of coffee was worth more than a silver dollar to men on the march. You believe him. The black liquid may taste bitter, but it sharpens the mind, steadies the nerves, and for a few minutes makes the war recede. A corporal ambles by, checking fires and watching for stragglers. His eyes narrow when he spots a private trying to linger over his cup. "Drink up, boy." "We march within the hour," he growls. The private gulps the scalding brew and wipes his mouth with the back of his hand, grimacing but compliant. The Union Army runs on routine as much as it does on rations. Every soldier knows the pattern: wake at dawn to the bugle, eat, quickly pack gear, fall in. To break that rhythm is to invite chaos. You toss the last softened chunk of hardtack into your mouth and stand brushing crumbs from your jacket. Your canteen sloshes lightly at your side, a reminder that water too must be managed carefully. There will be streams along the road, but men are forbidden to break ranks for a drink until ordered. An undisciplined column is a vulnerable one. You remember the cautionary tale from last month's march, when a company ahead of you broke formation to rush a creek. Confederate cavalry scouts spotted the confusion and harassed them for miles, turning a simple water stop into a deadly lesson. Nearby, two privates argue in low tones over a letter from home. One claims his wife has taken ill, the other swears it's a ploy to lure him back. Both men know desertion means a court-martial and the noose, yet the ache of separation weighs heavier than fear of punishment. You glance at your own breast pocket where a folded scrap of paper from your sister rests. She writes of harvests and neighborly gossip, but between her lines you sense the strain of keeping the farm alive with no men to plow or defend it. That letter, creased and faded, is worth more than any ration. A new smell threads through the camp wood smoke, mingled with the faint sweetness of cornmeal. Someone has bartered for a handful of it enough to fry into small cakes on a skillet balanced over the fire. The scent draws a few hopeful glances, but the cakes disappear into eager hands before you can even step forward. Such luxuries are rare. They pass from cook fire to stomach in minutes. The sergeant's voice booms again. Pack it up, boys. Around you, the regiment moves with practiced efficiency. Tin cups are drained and slung onto belts. Fires are doused with a hiss and haversacks are cinched tight. Men check the percussion caps on their rifles, fingers quick despite the chill. In this army, a delay in packing can mean a lost march, or worse, a missed fight. You shoulder your haversack and feel the familiar weight settle against your hip, a reminder that every ounce matters when you may walk 20 miles before dusk. As you tighten the strap across your chest, you catch the sharp scent of linseed oil from a nearby rifle being cleaned, mingling with the earthy odor of trampled grass. The morning sun climbs higher, scattering the last remnants of mist. Drums beat a steady cadence, a sound both reassuring and ominous. This is the rhythm of war. Eat what you can, carry what you must, and be ready to move before the echoes of breakfast fade. Samuel claps you on the shoulder as he passes, his face already set with the grim focus of the march. "Another day, brother," he says, and you nod in return. Around you, the company forms ranks, a living machine built from hunger, discipline, and sheer will. The memory of hot coffee lingers on your tongue as the sergeant calls the men to attention. Whatever comes next, dusty roads, blistering sun, or the thunder of distant artillery, you will face it with an empty stomach and a steady step. The order to form ranks comes with the metallic echo of discipline, and you know the ritual by heart. Before a single foot can march, every man checks the gear that keeps him alive. Your hands move automatically as if the equipment itself demands inspection. The Springfield rifle rests against your shoulder, its walnut stock dark with oil and sweat. 9 pounds of iron and wood. It is the difference between a fighting soldier and a defenseless target. You slide a finger over the lock plate, testing the smooth catch of the hammer. A clean rifle means a faster shot and perhaps a second chance at seeing home. Next comes the cartridge box. The leather creaks as you unfasten the flap to count 40 paper cartridges, powder, and ball wrapped in fragile paper. Each one is a single heartbeat of battle, a promise, and a threat. You remember the drill bite, the paper pour, powder ram, the ball shoulder, and fire. Over and over until the smoke grows so thick it hides the sun. You retie the strap and feel the weight settle against your hip, a constant reminder that every step you take carries the burden of potential death. The bayonet slides easily into its scabbard, a cold length of steel that turns your rifle into a spear. You rarely use it, yet the officers insist it remain razor sharp. There are stories grim whispered of charges that end in the chaos of close combat, where the bayonet is the only answer. You force the thought away and tighten the leather frog that secures it. Your haversack is next, the canvas rough beneath your fingers. Inside lies the day's ration of hardtack and salt pork, a tin cup, a wooden spoon, and a few precious personal items, the letter from your sister, a folded photograph of your parents, a small pocket Bible with pages worn thin. These scraps of home weigh nothing compared to their worth. You tuck the haversack closed and sling it across your body, feeling the strap bite slightly into your shoulder. Then comes the blanket roll. The wool is stiff and smells of smoke, but it is your only bed and your only shield against the chill. You roll it tightly and tie it with a strip of twine, fastening it across your chest in the practiced diagonal that distributes weight evenly. Beneath it, you strap your half of the canvas shelter, a dog tent that will, when matched with a comrade's, become your fragile home for the night. The thought of pitching it under the stars is both comforting and cruel. The sky may be beautiful, but the ground will always be hard. The canteen hangs last, a round tin drum sloshing with the morning's fill of water. You check the cork stopper and tighten the strap. Water is life on a long march, and a leaky canteen can be a death sentence. Garage. Beside it, the small tin of cleaning oil and your single change of socks complete the kit. You weigh it all in your mind, roughly 40 pounds, perhaps more if the day brings extra ammunition or a share of the company's cooking gear. Around you, the same ritual unfolds in silence, broken only by the scrape of buckles and the occasional cough. 100 men transforming from a ragged collection of individuals into a uniform column of soldiers. It is a dance learned through repetition and necessity, honed by weeks of campaigning. The officers watch with critical eyes, knowing that the Army's strength lies not only in its weapons, but in the order of its men. You catch sight of Samuel adjusting his knapsack straps, his brow furrowed as he balances the weight. 40 pounds feels like 80 some days, he mutters with a faint smile. You nod, sharing the quiet camaraderie of those who carry not just equipment, but the invisible load of uncertainty. Each buckle tightened is a small act of defiance against chaos. A corporal strides past, inspecting the line. He pauses to tug at a strap to correct the angle of a blanket roll, to remind a young recruit to secure his percussion caps. Check twice, he warns. A loose cap today is a misfire tomorrow. His voice is firm but not unkind. Experience has taught him that mistakes made in camp become tragedies in battle. As the sun climbs higher, its light glints off polished brass buckles and the dark steel of stacked rifles. The air grows warmer, carrying the mixed scents of oil leather and the faint sweetness of pine. You shift your shoulders, testing the balance of the load. The weight presses into your muscles, but it is a familiar burden, one that has become almost an extension of your body. For a fleeting moment, you think of the farmers and tradesmen you once were, or might have been, if not for the war. Men who measured weight in sacks of grain or bundles of wood, not in bullets and bayonets. The contrast is sharp, but there is no room for longing now. The Army has stripped you to essentials, rifle rations resolve. A final bugle call pierces the air, urgent and commanding. The regiment stiffens as officers take their places. You sling the rifle to your shoulder and step into line, the 40-pound kit settling like a second skin. Each strap, each buckle, each ounce is a silent contract. You will carry this weight through dust and rain, through hunger and fear, until the day's march is done or until fate relieves you of it. The drums begin their steady tattoo, a heartbeat for the coming miles. The column shifts forward as one boot striking the earth in unison. Your gear rattles softly, with each step a constant chorus of leather and metal. Ahead lies the road, long and uncertain, but you are ready. The weight is heavy, yes, but it is the weight of survival, and you shoulder it without hesitation. The order to move ripples down the column like a sudden breeze. A sergeant bellows, "Forward march," and the regiment lurches into motion boots, striking the packed dirt with a hollow thud. The sound becomes a rhythm, a relentless drumbeat that soon drowns out the birds and the idle chatter of early morning. You fall into step automatically, your 40-pound kit settling against your back and shoulders, with each stride the rifle at your side, a familiar counterweight. The road ahead is nothing more than a rutted track of dust and broken stones still damp in the hollows from last night's dew. Early sun slants through the pines, painting the world in sharp gold and deep shadow. Within minutes, the morning cool fades, replaced by the sticky weight of heat that clings to your collar. You taste the metallic tang of your own sweat and the fine grit of dust kicked up by the 100 men ahead. Every breath brings more of it coating your tongue, until even the memory of coffee feels like a cruel dream. A corporal shouts cadence to keep the line steady. The pace is brisk, nearly 3 miles an hour, and the column stretches like a gray snake down the winding road. Discipline is everything on a march. If the men spread too wide or lag behind, confusion follows, and confusion invites danger, ambush, stray fire, or the slow bleed of exhaustion that can ruin a day's objective. You remember the cautionary stories told around campfires, regiments that lost half their strength not to bullets, but to heat strokes, straggling in panic when a single shot from the woods sent them scattering. Your canteen thumps against your hip, with every step a steady reminder of thirst. The sergeant has already warned that water breaks will come only at designated stops. Men who break ranks for a stream risk a flogging or worse. Last month, a regiment nearby lost 2 men when Confederate cavalry surprised them as they crowded a creek. The lesson is fresh in every soldier's mind: better to suffer the dry burn in your throat than risk the chaos of an undisciplined halt. Ahead, the road dips into a shallow valley where the air grows still and heavy. Heat presses down like a wet blanket, and soon the first groans ripple through the ranks. Dust clings to sweat-slick faces. Boots chafe heels raw. You adjust your blanket roll, shifting the weight to ease the dull ache in your shoulders. Around you, men mutter prayers or curses, their breath turning ragged as the miles stretch. Samuel, marching beside you, wipes a sleeve across his brow and grins through gritted teeth. "Only 20 more like this, eh?" he says, his voice rasping. You manage a weary smile. By mid-morning, the column crests a low ridge. From here, the countryside spreads in a patchwork of farm fields and dense woodland. The smoke of a distant homestead rises in a thin blue line, a fragile sign of civilian life amid the vastness of war. Somewhere beyond those woods, Confederate pickets might be watching silent shadows, who know these back roads better than any map. The thought adds a subtle tension to every footfall. The officers ride along the flanks, scanning the horizon with hard eyes. Their horses snort and toss their heads' hooves, striking sparks on the stones. The sight of them mounted authoritative reminds every man that this march is no simple hike. You are part of a living machine, hundreds of boots, dozens of rifles, each soldier a single cog. If the machine falters, the enemy will be there to seize the weakness. A bugle call signals a brief halt. The regiment stops as one men sagging where they stand, grateful for the moment's mercy. You drop your blanket roll and stretch, feeling the pull of stiff muscles. Dust rises in lazy clouds hanging in the still air. The officers confer quietly over a map while soldiers loosen straps and check their gear. Some swig from their canteens despite the sergeant's glare. Others simply collapse onto the roadside grass hats pulled low against the sun. You take a cautious sip of water, savoring the warm, metallic taste. It is not enough to quench thirst, only to keep the tongue from sticking to the roof of the mouth. Around you, men trade bits of gossip, rumors of Confederate troop movements, speculation about the day's destination, and the eternal question of when the war might end. Each story contradicts the last. One private swears Richmond will fall within weeks. Another claims the rebels are massing for a counterstrike that could stretch the conflict for years. The truth, as always, remains hidden behind miles of smoke and the silence of commanding officers. The rest is brief. Soon, the bugle calls again, sharp and insistent. "Fall in," the sergeant barks. You shoulder your gear, the straps biting anew, and step back into the slow grind of the march. The sun now stands high, burning through the haze. Sweat trickles down your spine, soaking the waistband of your trousers. Your boots, stiff from yesterday's damp, begin to rub raw spots on your heels. With every mile, the pain grows, a steady throb that demands attention. Yet the rhythm of the column pulls you forward, a collective will stronger than individual discomfort. By noon, the road narrows through a corridor of towering pines. The canopy offers shade, but the air beneath is heavy with the resinous scent of sap and the faint sweetness of decaying leaves. Here, the world feels muffled sound swallowed by the dense forest. Every crack of a branch sets nerves on edge. You tighten your grip on the rifle strap, aware of how easily an ambush could unfold in these close quarters. The march continues relentless. Time blurs into the steady beat of boots on earth, the rasp of leather, the occasional creak of a wagon wheel behind the column. Hunger gnaws at your stomach, but there will be no meal until evening. You focus on small details to pass the miles, the pattern of pine needles along the trail, the way sunlight flickers through the branches like distant musket flashes, the sound of Samuel humming a low, tuneless melody to keep his spirits from fraying. When the forest finally opens, a breeze carries the smell of fresh water, clean, cool, tantalizing. A narrow stream glints ahead, and a ripple of anticipation passes through the ranks. The sergeant raises a hand and the column halts. 2 minutes only, he announces. Fill canteens, no wandering. Men surge forward, kneeling to scoop water or refill their tins, careful to stay within sight. The water is sweet and cold, a brief salvation. You drink quickly, knowing the march will not wait for anyone. The respite is over almost as soon as it begins. The bugle calls again, and you rise with a reluctant sigh, boots squelching in the mud by the stream's edge. As the regiment reforms, you catch a distant rumble, low and drawn out like thunder over the hills. Artillery, or just a storm gathering beyond the horizon. The officers exchange glances, but give no word. The column moves on the sound, fading to a whisper behind you. Afternoon light slants through scattered clouds, and the road climbs once more. You feel every pound of your gear, now each step a negotiation between will and fatigue. Yet there is a strange comfort in the repetition, a numbness that quiets fear. The men around you march in silence, bound together by shared suffering and the unspoken hope that the next bend in the road will bring rest, or at least a glimpse of what lies ahead. By late afternoon, the first signs of camp appear: a cleared meadow ringed by oak smoke from advanced cooking fires, curling upward. The bugle finally sounds the halt, and a collective exhale ripples through the regiment. Another day's march is done. Your feet throb, your shoulders ache, but you are still standing. Tomorrow will bring more miles, perhaps more danger. But for now, there is the small victory of survival and the promise of evening when letters may be read by firelight, and the stars will wheel overhead as indifferent witnesses to the long war still unfolding. The meadow settles into the hush of evening as the regiment fans out to make camp. Boots scuff over dry grass, tents rise in ragged rows, and the acrid scent of smoke curls skyward as small fires sputter to life. The day's march still throbs in your muscles, a dull, insistent ache, but the promise of rest lends each motion a quiet satisfaction. You drop your gear beside a small oak, stretch your shoulders, and draw a deep breath of cool air scented with pine and the faint sweetness of wildflowers. The first priority is water. You follow a trickling stream to refill your canteen, savoring the way the cold metal warms in your palm. Then, almost by instinct, your hand slips into the breast pocket of your jacket and closes on a folded scrap of paper, the letter. Its edges are softened from constant handling, the ink slightly blurred where sweat once smudged it during a rain-soaked march. You know every word by heart, yet the simple act of unfolding it slows your pulse and brings the distant murmur of camp to a gentle hush. Your sister's handwriting arches across the page, neat but hurried, as if she had rushed to capture a fleeting thought. She writes of the autumn harvest back home, how the corn stands tall despite a dry summer, how neighbors have pitched in to help with the plowing. She tells you that your dog still waits by the gate every evening as though expecting your return, and that the old oak by the barn has begun to turn the color of rusted copper. These details, mundane and small, are a lifeline across hundreds of miles. They are proof that the world beyond war still exists, that life continues in quiet rhythms of planting and reaping of dogs who remember. A line near the end never fails to tighten your chest. We light a candle each night and pray for your safe return. Come home when you can, but come home whole. You trace the words with a calloused thumb. The paper smells faintly of wood smoke and home, and for a moment the meadow fades away. You can almost hear the creak of the farmhouse door, the lowing of cattle, the whisper of wind through fields of corn. Around the fires, similar rituals unfold. Samuel sits cross-legged by the flames, reading a letter aloud to a small knot of men. His voice, normally rough and boisterous, softens to a near whisper as he speaks of his young daughter's first steps. The others lean in, nodding, smiling faintly. One soldier, Davis, a new recruit barely 18, wipes at his eyes when he thinks no one notices. It is not weakness, it is recognition. Every man here knows the power of a letter to bridge the gulf between war and home. A few soldiers without mail listen quietly, sharing in the joy and pain, as if the words were their own. For them, the letters of others become communal lifelines, proof that someone somewhere still waits. When the mailbags come light, disappointment hangs heavy. But tonight, for once, the courier brought enough to pass around. In the flickering light, pages unfold like fragile wings. The camp hums with low conversation as men trade news from every corner of the Union. Someone laughs softly at a child's misspelled word. Another reads a line from his sweetheart's letter, prompting a round of knowing grins. The laughter is subdued, but it cuts through the day's fatigue like a spark in dry tinder. Even the gruff sergeant cracks a small smile when a private reads a poem his wife sent its rhyme, awkward but sincere. You take a seat near the fire, letting the warmth seep into your bones. The stars above are sharp and cold, scattered across a velvet sky. Crickets chirp from the tall grass at the meadow's edge. In this moment, the war feels distant, as though it belongs to some other world beyond the circle of firelight. You read the letter again slower this time, committing each word to memory until you could recite it blindfolded. When you finish, you fold the paper carefully and slip it back into your pocket. The act is deliberate, almost ceremonial. Around you, the others do the same, tucking their own fragile connections to home into haversacks and breast pockets. These letters are more than ink on paper. They are talismans against despair, silent companions for the miles ahead. Some men carry small keepsakes, a pressed flower, a lock of hair, a ribbon, each item a private reminder of why they march. Samuel catches your eye and raises his cup in a quiet salute. You return the gesture, feeling the unspoken bond between you. He has shared stories of his wife and little girl, of the small Missouri farm waiting for him. You know the sound of his daughter's name, the cadence of his wife's laugh, though you have never met them. In return, he knows the smell of your family's kitchen, the curve of the hills near your home. In a war that strips men to uniforms and rifles, these shared fragments of ordinary life are a rebellion against anonymity. As the night deepens, the camp grows still. Fires burn low, throwing long shadows across the meadow. A lone bugler plays a soft, mournful tune, taps the new lights out call that has begun to spread through the army this year. The notes hang in the cool air, sweet and solemn. Men pause, heads bowed, some whispering a prayer. The melody is both lullaby and lament, a reminder of those who will not see another dawn. You lie back on your blanket, the earth cool and firm beneath you. The stars blur slightly as your eyes grow heavy. The letter presses lightly against your chest, a steady reassurance with every breath. In the darkness, you think of your sister's candle flickering in the farmhouse window of Samuel's daughter, taking her first unsteady steps, of all the lives still unfolding beyond the smoke and dust of war. Sleep comes slowly but surely, carrying with it dreams of home. Tomorrow will bring another march, another test of endurance. But tonight, you are anchored by words written in a familiar hand. They are enough to hold back the loneliness, enough to keep hope alive as the night settles over the silent waiting field. Morning's hardships and the grind of the march fade as night deepens and the camp settles into its familiar rhythms. The meadow is now alive with a constellation of small fires, each a flickering heart, around which soldiers gather to reclaim a sliver of normal life. Tin cups clink softly as men share the last of their coffee or water, and the smell of wood smoke drifts upward in lazy spirals, carrying with it the mingled scents of sweat leather and faintly sweet pine. You sit cross-legged on a wool blanket near Samuel, who is carving a sliver of wood into a crude whistle for his daughter. His hands, though cracked and rough from the day's march, move with quiet precision. Across the way, a group of veterans is engaged in a low-stakes game of poker. The deck soft from years of use, the pot a humble mix of tobacco scraps, buttons, and a few coins that clink when tossed onto the blanket. Their laughter, rough and unrestrained, is the purest sound you've heard all day. The evening meal is a modest affair. Salt pork sizzles in a blackened skillet set over glowing coals, the fat spitting and popping. A few lucky soldiers manage to forage wild onions along the road and toss them in for flavor, their sharp scent mingling with the savory smoke. You chew your portion slowly, savoring the simple richness, as if it were a feast. A nearby soldier, young Davis, grins as he bites into a chunk of hardtack softened with bacon grease, declaring it the best supper in the Union. Everyone laughs, not because it's true, but because in this moment, the illusion is enough. As bellies fill, conversation drifts to every subject but war. Someone recites a fragment of Shakespeare Hamlet's soliloquy, halting but heartfelt, while another counters with a bawdy folk song that draws a chorus of hoots. A pair of fiddlers tune their instruments, and soon a reel dances across the camp, quick and lilting feet, tapping in time. Even the sergeant allows a small smile as he passes, his usual bark softened to a quiet hum. For a few precious hours, the men are more than soldiers. They are farmers, carpenters, school teachers, sons and brothers sharing music and smoke under the indifferent stars. You lean back, staring into the sky where the Milky Way spills like a ghostly river across the dark. The constellations remind you of evenings at home lying in tall grass while your father traced patterns overhead. Orion's belt, the Great Bear, the endless arc of the heavens. That memory sharpens both comfort and ache. Around you, men talk of their own homes. Small towns in Ohio, bustling streets in Boston, quiet farms in Missouri. Each story carries a warmth that momentarily dissolves the war, weaving a tapestry of distant places connected by longing. The camaraderie grows as the firelight flickers. Samuel finishes the whistle and tests it with a soft, breathy note. "For Mary," he says with a quiet pride. Davis leans over to admire it, his youthful face glowing in the fire's amber light. "She'll love it," he says, and Samuel nods, eyes reflecting both hope and a shadow of worry. You know that fear well, the unspoken question of whether any of these tokens will ever reach their intended hands. Nearby, a soldier named Briggs produces a harmonica from his breast pocket and begins a slow, mournful tune. The melody drifts through the camp, low and haunting, carrying echoes of home. Conversations soften to murmurs. As men listen, their faces turn toward the music. The song has no name, but it feels like a prayer, whispered across miles of darkness. The talk eventually turns to small wagers and harmless boasts. Who can march the longest without a blister? Who can clean a rifle fastest in the dark? You chuckle when Samuel brags he could outshoot any man here with a single shot, and the others challenge him to prove it come morning. The friendly competition lightens the mood, sharpening bonds forged in shared hardship. Each jest, each story is a thread binding the company tighter, a defense against the gnawing edge of loneliness. As the night deepens, the temperature drops. Men pull blankets tighter and feed the fires with whatever wood they can find. Sparks leap into the air, brief stars before they vanish into the black. The camp smells of pine resin and singed wool, an oddly comforting perfume of soldiering. You shift closer to the fire, stretching sore legs and feeling the pleasant heaviness of fatigue seep into your bones. Occasionally, the talk brushes against the war rumors of distant battles, speculation about the next movement of Lee's forces, the eternal guessing about when this conflict will end. But the words carry no real conviction. Here in this moment, the war feels like a distant storm. What matters is the warmth of the fire, the nearness of friends, the small miracles of survival and companionship. A corporal wanders through the camp, reminding men of their picket assignments for the night. He pauses by your fire, glancing at his roster. "You're on the second watch," he says. "Midnight until 2. You nod, accustomed to the rhythm of broken sleep. Samuel groans good-naturedly. He's been assigned the first watch and will wake you when it's time. The corporal moves on his shadow, stretching long in the firelight. The fiddlers play a final tune, a slow waltz that lingers in the cool air. When they finish, a gentle quiet settles over the meadow. Fires burn, lower voices soften to murmurs or fade into the night entirely. The men stretch out under the stars, some in paired dog tents, others beneath the open sky. You watch as Davis tucks his mother's letter beneath his jacket, pressing it close to his heart. The gesture is simple but deeply human, a silent acknowledgement of what truly keeps each man alive. Before lying down, you walk to the edge of camp. Beyond the last flicker of firelight, the world is ink black and still. The forest looms like a silent cathedral, branches swaying in the faint breeze. You listen for the distant cry of an owl, the rustle of small animals, the hidden life that persists even in wartime. For a moment, you are acutely aware of the thin line that separates safety from danger, a few feet of darkness, a few heartbeats of warning. Returning to the fire, you wrap yourself in the coarse wool of your blanket and stretch out on the hard ground. The earth is cool, but the warmth of the flames lingers on your skin. Samuel lies nearby, already breathing in the deep rhythm of sleep, the whistle for his daughter clutched loosely in his hand. You close your eyes and let the night sounds wash over you. The soft crackle of embers, the distant call of a nightbird, the muted murmurs of men slipping into dreams. For these few hours, the camp is more than a temporary bivouac. It is a fragile sanctuary where soldiers become men again, where music and laughter defy the brutal arithmetic of war. In the fragile circle of firelight, you feel the bonds of camaraderie tighten like a protective shield. Tomorrow the march will resume, and with it the weight of uncertainty. But tonight, beneath a dome of endless stars, you belong to something steadier than orders or strategy. You belong to this brotherhood, imperfect, exhausted, and fiercely alive. The camp may quiet under a canopy of stars, but an unseen threat lingers long after the last embers fade. It is not the sudden musket crack of a Confederate ambush or the roar of distant artillery that claims the most soldiers. It is disease creeping through tents like a silent assassin. You wake before dawn to the low moan of a fellow private a few yards away. The sound is raw, pulled from deep in his chest. Lantern light flickers across his sweat-sheened face as he clutches his stomach, his body racked with cramps. A corporal kneels beside him muttering a prayer while offering the only medicine available, a swallow of tepid water and a few mercury-laden blue mass pills that promise little but the hope of relief. The surgeon summoned from another corner of camp arrives with a small satchel and weary eyes. He can do little more than offer laudanum for pain and a grim shake of the head. Dysentery, typhoid, measles, pneumonia. These names haunt every regiment. Long before a bullet finds a target, these illnesses claim men in staggering numbers. You've heard the whispered statistics from veterans: for every soldier killed in combat, at least 2 more succumb to disease. The damp blankets, shared utensils, and crowded tents create the perfect breeding ground for invisible killers. No matter how many times the sergeant barks about boiling water or cleaning the latrines, the rules bend under exhaustion and necessity. As the first pale light of dawn brushes the horizon, the camp surgeon moves to another patient, this one coughing blood into a rag. The smell of sickness hangs heavy, sour, and metallic. It mixes with the more familiar sense of wood smoke and damp earth, creating a miasma that turns your stomach. You pull your blanket tighter around your shoulders as if the coarse wool might ward off microbes you cannot see. Samuel joins you near the dwindling fire, his face drawn. "That's the 3rd man this week," he says quietly. His eyes track the surgeon's movements with a wary focus. "Rebels aren't the ones killing us." He's right. The battlefield might be spectacular and sudden, but it's these hidden afflictions that grind an army down. Dysentery spreads with a single contaminated spoon or an unwashed hand. Typhoid rides in on a careless water refill. Measles can sweep through a company in days, striking men who have never faced it as children. You've watched strong men farmers who once worked dawn to dusk reduced to husks in less than a week. Breakfast is late delayed by the sick call. When the hardtack finally arrives, many men can't eat. A few of the healthier soldiers attempt to cheer the camp with dark humor, joking that the army should issue coffee strong enough to kill all known germs. Their laughter is forced, but the effort matters. Morale is a fragile shield, and gallows humor sometimes keeps despair at bay. The surgeon finally stands his apron stained and instructs the sergeant to set up a quarantine tent. A half-collapsed canvas is pulled into a corner of the meadow, its shadow stretching long and ominous in the early light. The sick man is carried there, his face pale and eyes closed, while the rest of you avert your gaze. You know the odds. Few return from the quarantine tent. Water discipline tightens. The sergeant orders every canteen boiled if possible, though firewood is scarce. You recall how the officers preach the importance of hygiene. Wash hands clean, utensils bury waste far from camp, but such instructions crumble under fatigue. After a 20-mile march, men sometimes drink straight from a muddy stream, consequences be damned. The need for water always wins over caution. Mid-morning brings a brief respite as the sun burns through the fog, but the memory of illness lingers like a shadow. You clean your rifle with unusual care, letting the rhythmic swab and oil calm your mind. Around you, others engage in small rituals of control, mending a tear in a sock, re-rolling a blanket, polishing a bayonet until it catches the light. These acts are more than maintenance. They are quiet assertions of life in the face of uncertainty. Stories circulate of entire regiments ravaged by cholera, of camps where more men died from fever than from enemy fire. A veteran named Briggs tells of the Peninsula Campaign, where summer swamps bred clouds of mosquitoes carrying malaria. He describes men shaking with chills under blazing sun teeth, chattering while sweat streamed down their faces. His voice drops as he recalls burying friends in shallow graves because the ground was too wet to dig deeper. You glance toward this quarantine tent. The canvas flaps barely stir in the breeze. Somewhere inside, a man fights an invisible war with no heroics, no glory. Only the slow, grinding struggle to keep breathing. You wonder if his family will ever know the details of his final hours, or if a simple telegram died of illness will be all that remains. After the noon meal of salt pork and scorched hardtack, the captain gathers the company for a brief talk. His face is stern, but his voice carries a note of reluctant compassion. He reminds everyone to keep canteens covered to boil water when possible, to wash hands before eating. We fight 2 wars, he says, scanning the faces before him. One with the enemy and one with the unseen. Lose the second and the first won't matter. The men nod, some solemnly, others with a flicker of defiance. They know the truth of his words, though it feels impossible to follow every order after a punishing march. The afternoon drifts in a haze of cautious routine. You help Samuel gather kindling and dig a shallow trench for refuse. The work is dull but oddly comforting, each stroke of the small shovel a barrier, however thin, against the unseen enemy. When you return to camp, you wash your hands in a trickle of stream water despite its chill scrubbing until your skin reddens. The act feels both futile and necessary. Toward evening, the bugler sounds a soft call for assembly. A chaplain steps forward, his Bible tucked under one arm. He offers a brief prayer for the sick and a reminder that vigilance is as holy as faith. Some men bow their heads, others stare into the distance where the setting sun bleeds crimson across the sky. The color is unsettling, too close to the memory of blood. As darkness gathers, you sit with Samuel by the fire, its glow throwing warm light across his face. He speaks quietly of his wife's herbal remedies back home, peppermint for fevers, vinegar for sore throats, and wonders aloud if such simple cures would help here. You shrug, unsure. The war has stripped even common comforts to bare essentials. A sprig of peppermint feels as distant as the moon. Night falls, fully the forest around camp whispering with unseen life. Crickets sing an uneven chorus, and somewhere a lone owl calls. Despite the familiar sounds, unease lingers. You glance again at the quarantine tent. A lantern glows faintly within a lonely star amid the dark. Each flicker feels like a heartbeat, fragile and uncertain. When you finally lie down, the air is sharp with the scent of smoke and damp earth. The memory of the sick man's moans echoes in your ears. You pull the blanket tight and focus on the steady rhythm of your own breathing, aware of how precious each breath truly is. In this war, survival is not just about dodging bullets. It is about enduring a daily invisible siege. One fought not with rifles and bayonets, but with disciplined luck and the stubborn will to see another dawn. The meadow is dark now, the fires banked low to keep their glow from carrying beyond the tree line. Stars wheel silently overhead, brilliant and cold, and the night air bites sharper than the evening before. Around you, the camp exhales into uneasy sleep, men shifting under coarse blankets, the occasional cough breaking the quiet. But for those on picket duty, rest is a luxury that belongs to others. Samuel shakes your shoulder gently, his face a dim shape against the dying fire. "Your turn," he whispers. You roll free of your blanket, every joint stiff with the chill. The moon, a pale slice of silver, throws enough light to guide your way as you shoulder your rifle and adjust the straps of your haversack. The ground crunches faintly underfoot, dew beginning to form on the brittle grass. The sergeant meets you near the edge of camp with a nod. No loud orders here. The night demands silence. He hands you a small tin lantern, its flame hooded, and points toward a narrow path that snakes into the woods. "Post 2, he says softly. "Stay sharp. No heroics." His eyes linger for a moment, a silent reminder that the stillness of darkness can deceive. You walk the short trail alone, the forest closing in like a living wall. Every sound magnifies in the darkness, the dry snap of a twig, the soft rustle of leaves high in the oaks, the distant gurgle of the stream you crossed earlier in daylight. Your senses sharpen until even your own breathing feels loud. Somewhere behind you, a nightbird calls its cry, sudden and eerie. The picket post is a small rise overlooking the road you marched that afternoon. From here, you can see a pale ribbon of dirt stretching into the trees, glowing faintly in the moonlight. You settle behind a fallen log, positioning your rifle within easy reach. The lantern stays hooded. Its weak glow would only betray your presence. You listen. This is a different kind of war. No bugle, no drum, no shouted cadence, only the discipline of silence. The officer's instructions echo in memory. Report, don't reveal your position. Only fire if absolutely certain. A careless shot could expose the regiment or spark a skirmish you can't win. So you wait, eyes straining in the dim light, ears tuned to every whisper of the woods. Minutes stretch into hours. You trace constellations through breaks in the canopy, measure time by the slow drift of Orion across the sky. The night smells of damp earth and distant pine smoke, a scent both calming and unsettling. Occasionally a breeze stirs the trees, carrying with it the faint creak of wagons, or maybe the imagined murmur of enemy scouts. A rustle to your left snaps you upright, heart hammering. You grip the rifle and peer into the darkness. For a breathless moment, nothing moves. Then a deer steps cautiously from the brush, its eyes catching the moonlight like twin lanterns. It stares, ears flicking, then bounds silently away. You exhale the tension, leaving your shoulders in a slow wave. The forest is full of such false alarms, rabbits, owls, the restless wind. But every sound holds the possibility of danger. You remember the story of a picket who fired at a shadow only to discover it was a fellow sentry returning from a scout. The memory keeps your finger off the trigger. Better to endure the suspense than to spill friendly blood. From deeper in the woods comes a faint metallic clink, like a loose horseshoe striking stone. Your breath catches. You strain to hear, counting the seconds between sounds. Another clink, then silence. Perhaps a wandering animal, or a patrol testing the edges of your line. You tighten your grip on the rifle, but hold your fire. The sergeant's words echo, no heroics. The noise fades. Perhaps it was nothing, or perhaps someone out there now knows the regiment's position. The uncertainty presses heavier than the night air. You keep your eyes fixed on the dark road, aware of how fragile the boundary between safety and ambush truly is. Hours crawl by. The cold seeps through your jacket until it settles in your bones. You shift to keep blood flowing, careful not to break the rhythm of silence. Thoughts wander to home, your sister's candle flickering in the farmhouse window, the smell of bread from your mother's oven, the sound of distant church bells. These memories are both comfort and torment, reminders of a world beyond this endless vigilance. At last, faint footsteps approach from behind. You pivot silently, rifle ready, until a low whistle, your company's signal, cuts through the stillness. It's the corporal, his outline barely visible against the pale sky. Relief, he whispers. 2 o'clock. You nod, rising stiffly. The forest seems to exhale as you follow him back toward camp, every step a small victory over the night's tension. Behind you, another soldier takes your post, his silhouette merging with the shadows as you once did. Back at camp, the fires are little more than glowing coals. Men lie curled beneath blankets, their faces ghostly in the faint starlight. You ease down beside Samuel, who shifts enough to make room. The ground is cold and unyielding, but you welcome it now, the hard earth proof that you've survived another watch without a shot fired. As you drift towards sleep, the forest hums with life, wind through branches, a distant owl, the soft chorus of insects. The night has passed without bloodshed, yet the tension lingers, a quiet reminder that danger needs no drum roll. In the war's endless equation of chance tonight, you have drawn a lucky number. Tomorrow, luck will need to hold again. By dawn, the camp is stirring again, the fragile hush of night replaced by the muted bustle of soldiers shaking off sleep. Dew glistens on tent canvas and rifle barrels, tiny jewels that sparkle in the early light. You sit upright slowly, muscles stiff from the cold ground, and listen to the low murmur of voices that ripple through the meadow. Something is different this morning. An undercurrent of restless energy runs beneath the routine clatter of cups and boots. Rumors have arrived ahead of the day's orders, moving through the regiment like wildfire. One private swears he overheard an officer say that Richmond is on the verge of surrender. Another insists that Confederate scouts were seen crossing a river just a few miles south, poised for an ambush. A third claims that General McClellan himself has ordered a sweeping advance that will end the war by Christmas. None of it can be verified, but each story is repeated and embellished until it feels almost true. You've learned to treat such tales with skepticism. War breeds rumors as readily as it breeds flies, and truth often dies before the first volley is fired. Yet even as you roll your blanket and pack your haversack, you catch yourself listening for scraps of information, hoping for a hint of what lies ahead. The mind craves certainty even when experience warns that certainty is a mirage. Samuel joins you, his face shadowed by a thoughtful frown. They're saying we'll see action before nightfall, he says, tightening the strap of his knapsack. Somebody swears the rebels are massing beyond the next ridge. You shrug, adjusting your rifle. Somebody's always swearing that you reply, but you can't ignore the prickle of unease in your chest. Breakfast is the usual hardtack dunked in bitter coffee. Men eat quickly as if speed might somehow bring clarity. Conversations overlap arguments about troop movements, whispers of impending reinforcements, speculation about the enemy's strength. A few old veterans offer wry smiles, their silence more telling than words. They've seen enough campaigns to know that rumors are as inevitable as blisters and just as unreliable. The officers give nothing away. Captains and lieutenants stride through camp with practiced neutrality, their faces unreadable. A map is unrolled, then quickly folded again. Orders are murmured in low tones, punctuated by the occasional sharp nod. From their tight-lipped efficiency, you glean only one fact: the regiment will move soon. As the company forms ranks, the murmur of speculation swells. A soldier named Briggs, known for his tall tales, leans toward you with a conspiratorial grin. Heard from a courier last night, he whispers, they're sending us to intercept a rebel supply train. Easy pickings, they say. Could be home by winter. You raise an eyebrow. And if the rebels are waiting for us? Briggs shrugs, still grinning. Then we give him a fight to remember. The column begins to march, the sound of boots on dirt blending with the low drone of conversation. The road winds through gently rolling farmland, fields of corn and wheat stretching toward the horizon. Here and there, you pass small homesteads, their windows shuttered, their inhabitants hidden or long gone. Occasionally, a figure appears at a distance, a woman hanging laundry, a child watching silently from a doorway, but no one approaches the column. The civilians you glimpse wear expressions carved from equal parts fear and curiosity, their loyalties unreadable. As the sun climbs higher, the rumors evolve. Someone swears they heard artillery in the distance, though you hear only the steady rhythm of drums. Another insists that cavalry scouts spotted enemy riders just beyond the next hill. Each claim ignites a fresh wave of speculation that surges through the ranks, a tide of half-truths and wishful thinking. You wonder how many of these stories began as a single overheard word twisted and magnified until it became prophecy. The march halts briefly at a crossroads where two dirt tracks intersect beneath a grove of sycamores. Officers gather for a conference while soldiers drop packs and stretch cramped muscles. You take a sip from your canteen and glance at Samuel, who sits beside you on a fallen log. Think any of it's true? He asks, his voice low. Maybe parts you admit, but the first casualty of war is always the truth. Samuel chuckles softly, though his eyes remain watchful, spoken like an old veteran. You shrug, offering a wry smile. Just a tired one. Nearby, a small group debates whether Lincoln himself has ordered a new offensive. One man insists that the war will be over in months. Another predicts years of grinding stalemate. Their voices rise and fall like the rustling leaves above each argument, as insubstantial as the breeze. An hour later, the march resumes, carrying the regiment deeper into a landscape of dense forest and narrow ridges. The air grows heavy, scented with damp earth and wild ferns. Sunlight filters through the canopy in dappled patches, painting the road in shifting patterns of golden shadow. The rumors march with you, clinging like the ever-present dust. They become a kind of background music, half-heard notes of hope and fear that you can neither silence nor ignore. At midday, the company halts again in a small clearing. Men drop their packs and settle against tree trunks, grateful for a chance to rest. The sergeant announces a brief water break. and you follow a trickling stream to refill your canteen. The cold water soothes your parched throat, but the murmurs around you remain restless. Someone claims to have seen fresh hoofprints along the trail. Another swears a farmer warned of Confederate pickets nearby. You exchange a glance with Samuel. "If we keep hearing about rebels, they'll be ghosts before we ever see them." He nods, then tilts his head toward a group of veterans sharing a pipe. They don't seem worried. Indeed, the older soldiers lounge with an easy confidence born of experience. They've survived enough campaigns to know that rumors are smoke without fire until proven otherwise. One of them, a grizzled man named Hutchins, catches your eye and offers a knowing grin. "Don't waste breath on chatter," he says. "The fight finds you soon enough." The words carry a quiet weight that silences further speculation. You settle against a tree, letting the rough bark press into your back. The forest hums with insect song, the steady drone a counterpoint to the murmurs of the men. For a moment you close your eyes, listening to the rhythm of life that persists beyond war. The chirp of a sparrow, the distant splash of water over stones, the rustle of leaves in a passing breeze. When the order to move comes again, it is swift and unambiguous. Officers stride through the clearing, their voices brisk. Fall in double time. The regiment snaps to attention, rumors falling silent in the face of action. Whatever lies ahead will soon reveal itself, and speculation has no place in the ordered march of war. As the column pushes forward, the forest thins to reveal a low ridge bathed in late afternoon light. You sense a shift in the air, a subtle tension that tightens every step. The men around you straighten their backs, eyes scanning the tree line for signs of movement. The time for whispers is over. Reality approaches with the certainty of the setting sun. By the time the company halts at the base of the ridge, the rumors that consumed the morning feel like echoes from another life. The captain confers briefly with his lieutenants, then signals for the men to rest but remain alert. You drop to one-knee rifle across your lap, heart thudding with a mix of fatigue and anticipation. The day's long march has led to this moment, a stillness thick with possibility. Perhaps the enemy waits just beyond the crest. Perhaps it is only another quiet evening in a war defined by uncertainty. Either way, you know that soon, very soon, the truth will emerge and no rumor will matter against the hard edge of reality. The ridge ahead rises like a dark wave against the paling sky, its tree line serrated with pine and oak. Evening light slants across the clearing where your regiment waits, painting every rifle barrel with a copper gleam. The air is taut, vibrating with a tension you can feel in your bones. Orders ripple down the line in low, urgent voices. Stack packs, check cartridges, fix bayonet scabbards tight. You know these motions well, yet tonight each step carries a new weight, as if the very air anticipates the crack of musket fire. A bugle call, sharp, clipped, signals the advance. The column moves with measured precision, boots scuffing the dry leaves that carpet the slope. Your heart keeps time with the steady drum of feet and the occasional metallic jingle of canteens. The forest swallows the last light shadows pooling under the branches until the path ahead glows only in thin ribbons of fading dusk. Halfway up the ridge, the order comes, deploy skirmish line. The regiment fans into two ranks, men spacing themselves with the reflex of long drill. You take your place in the front rank, Springfield rifle in hand, thumb brushing the hammer. Behind you, Samuel shifts his weight, his breathing slow and deliberate. From somewhere ahead, the faint crack of a branch carries a sound too deliberate to be mere wildlife. Then it begins, a single distant pop, sharp and unmistakable, the first musket shot. It is answered at once by another, then a ragged volley that seems to come from everywhere at once. Smoke drifts through the trees, a gray veil that catches the last light of the sun. Officers bark commands, forward fire by rank. The regiment surges, training overtaking fear. You bite a cartridge, the taste of powder bitter on your tongue. Pour powder, ram the ball, shoulder aim. The drill is muscle memory now. You fire into the haze, the recoil slamming into your shoulder as sparks leap from the muzzle. A Confederate shout echoes from the trees, followed by the hiss and crack of return fire. Leaves shred and branches splinter as bullets whip past with a waspish hum. The smell of burnt powder thickens, acrid and heavy, clinging to your throat.
keep your intervals.
The lieutenant shouts, his voice barely audible over the roar. The front rank kneels to reload, while the second rank fires overhead, a deadly dance of precision and desperation. You ram another cartridge home, fingers slick with sweat despite the cooling air. All around you, the woods erupt in flashes of light, brief, searing glimpses of enemy muzzles hidden among the trunks. A cannon booms in the distance, a deeper thunder that rattles the ground beneath your knees. Artillery. The first shells whistle overhead, their trailing shriek ending in a concussive thump as dirt and bark shower the line. A tree splinters yards away, sending a spray of sharp fragments across the skirmishers. Someone cries out, but the command to advance drowns the sound. The regiment pushes forward step by step, the forest closing in like a narrowing corridor. Smoke swirls in ghostly eddies, blotting out the sunset. The air tastes of sulfur and iron. You fire again, the Springfield's barrel hot against your palm. Through the smoke, figures flicker, gray uniforms darting between trees, their faces momentarily lit by muzzle flashes. Each glimpse is a reminder that the enemy is made of men, not phantoms. Samuel shouts your name, pointing to a break in the tree line where a small group of Confederates darts for cover. You pivot, sighting down the barrel. A single squeeze, a burst of flame, and one figure stumbles before disappearing into the haze. There's no time to see if he falls. The line surges again, a living wall of men and smoke. The rhythm becomes everything bite pour ram, aim, fire. The musket's kick bruises your shoulder, but you hardly notice. Your ears ring a high-pitched whine that dulls the world to flashes and vibrations. Somewhere to your left, a soldier collapses, clutching his thigh where blood darkens the blue fabric. Two comrades drag him back without breaking formation. "Hold the line," the captain bellows. "Advance by company." The order moves down the ranks like a current. You step forward with the rest feet sliding on damp leaves, heart hammering in your chest. Another cannon report echoes closer this time, and the earth shivers as a shell explodes behind you. The blast sends a gust of warm air and the sharp scent of scorched wood. The enemy fire slackens for a moment, and in that fragile lull, you hear the forest itself, the distant rush of wind through branches, the frantic cry of a startled bird. Then another volley erupts, shattering the brief illusion of calm. A musket ball snaps through the branches above, showering you with splinters. You duck instinctively, teeth clenched against the sudden sting. As the skirmish drags on, the smoke grows so thick that daylight fades to a ghostly twilight. Faces blur, uniforms blend into a single shifting mass of gray and blue. You catch only fragments, Samuel's determined profile, as he reloads with mechanical speed, the lieutenant's sword flashing as he signals another advance, the steady thud of boots and the metallic click of ramrods striking barrels. The line edges forward until the trees thin and the slope begins to level. Through the swirling haze, you glimpse the faint glow of campfires, enemy fires hastily abandoned, or perhaps still guarded. The realization sends a jolt of adrenaline through your veins. The rebels are closer than you imagined. Prepare to charge. The order cuts through the din like a blade. Bayonets gleam as men fix them with practiced speed, the sharp metallic clink echoing in the smoky air. Your hands tremble as you lock the blade onto the muzzle of your rifle, transforming it into a spear of cold steel. The thought of close combat tightens your throat, but there is no time to dwell. The captain raises his sword, its edge catching the last trace of light. Forward double quick. The regiment surges a blue tide, crashing through smoke and shadow. Boots pound the ground in unison, the air filled with ragged shouts and the rising whistle of shells. You grip the rifle, hard bayonet forward, heart racing with a mix of fear and fierce resolve. The enemy fires again, a desperate volley that snaps branches and fells two men in the front rank. You leap over a fallen comrade, eyes locked on the shifting figures ahead. The world narrows to the charge, the pounding of blood in your ears, the rhythm of breath and footfalls, the smell of sweat and powder. The rebels break from the trees, their gray coats ghost-like in the haze. For a moment, everything slows, the distance between you measured in heartbeats. Then the lines collide with a sound like tearing metal. The impact is chaos. Bayonets clash, muskets fire at near point-blank range, smoke and sweat, blinding the senses. You thrust forward the rifle, jerking in your hands as the bayonet meets resistance. A rebel soldier swings his musket like a club. You duck instinctively, the rush of air grazing your ear. Around you, men shout, curse, and grunt in a brutal dance of survival. Somewhere to your right, Samuel shouts a warning, his voice ragged but steady. You pivot in time to see another gray figure lunging, and you parry with the butt of your rifle, the jolt shuddering up your arm. The Confederate stumbles, and a comrade pulls him back into the smoke. There is no triumph in the moment, only the relentless need to keep moving to stay alive. Minutes stretch into a timeless blur. The line surges and falters, pushes and yields. The forest floor becomes a churned mess of mud leaves and the dark stains of blood. The air is thick with the iron tang of it, the acrid bite of powder, the ragged cries of men locked in desperate combat. Then almost imperceptibly, the pressure eases. The gray line wavers, then begins to withdraw, slipping back through the trees, like ghosts into mist. Officers shout for order, their voices hoarse but commanding. Hold, regroup. The regiment steadies breath, ragged rifles still leveled in case of a counterattack. Silence when it comes is deafening. Smoke hangs low, catching the pale light of a rising moon. You stand among the panting, sweat-soaked ranks, the bayonet trembling in your grasp. Around you, men lower their rifles slowly, as if waking from a fever dream. The enemy is gone for now. You glance at Samuel, his face streaked with soot eyes, wide but alive. He meets your gaze and gives a single exhausted nod. The first contact is over, but the night is far from finished. Somewhere beyond the trees, the enemy regroups, and you know this is only the beginning of a much longer fight. The smoke drifts like low fog veiling the moon and turning the battlefield into a ghostly tableau of flickering shadows. You stand motionless at first chest, heaving the bayonet's tip trembling, as the adrenaline that carried you through the charge begins to ebb. Around you, men cough and spit blackened phlegm, their faces streaked with soot and sweat. Somewhere in the haze, a wounded soldier groans, the sound rising and falling like a distant church bell. Steady, dress the line. The line. The captain's voice cuts through the quiet, sharp as a whip. Instinct draws you back into formation, even as your knees threaten to buckle. One by one, the regiment reforms, shoulders aligning as if the chaos of moments ago had never happened. Discipline is your only shield now. A disordered line would invite disaster if the Confederates counterattack. The lieutenant moves swiftly down the ranks, checking weapons, counting heads. His sword gleams dully in the moonlight, a metronome of authority. Reload, he orders. The command is redundant. Every man who can still move has already begun the familiar drill tear. Cartridge, pour powder, ram ball cap, the nipple. The motions are automatic muscle memory overriding fatigue. You fumble only once, slick fingers slipping on the ramrod before you force it home. A distant crack echoes through the trees, then another. Skirmishers testing your resolve. The line stiffens, rifles rising as one. You catch the faint shuffle of movement ahead, shadows merging and separating among the trees. But no volley follows, only the uneasy rustle of leaves in a night breeze. The enemy is there, watching, perhaps regrouping. Samuel edges closer, his voice a low murmur. They'll try again, you can feel it. His eyes are wide but steady. You nod, sensing the same invisible pressure like the heavy air before a storm. Minutes stretch like hours. The forest around you seems to hold its breath. The smell of gunpowder clings to everything, your coat, your hair, the damp earth beneath your boots. Somewhere behind the line, a medic tends to the wounded, his soft commands blending with the occasional moan of pain. A man, too, files down, sags to his knees, a dark stain spreading across his sleeve. Without a word, a comrade helps him back to a safer position. Advance to the tree line. The captain's order is firm and the regiment moves in slow, deliberate steps. Bayonets remain fixed, muzzles leveled at the darkness. Each stride crunches softly over fallen leaves, the sound unnervingly loud in the hush. Your heart pounds in time with the march. every beat. A question: will the next step bring another volley? The trees close in their branches, knitting overhead like a black ceiling. You see faint movement, a flicker of gray cloth, the glint of a rifle barrel. But when you raise your weapon, the shapes dissolve into shadows. The enemy is close, yet invisible. The lieutenant signals a halt, hand raised in silent command. The line freezes, rifles trained on the shifting dark. For long minutes, nothing happens. Your breathing grows shallow. Sweat cools on your skin despite the chill. You imagine the Confederates crouch just beyond sight fingers on triggers waiting for a target. A single nervous shot could unleash chaos. You tighten your grip on the rifle, the wood warm from constant contact. Then from deeper in the woods, a muffled shout, quickly stifled. A twig snaps. The line stiffens, ready to fire. But the captain raises a hand, palm flat, and the men hold. Discipline wins over fear. The silence stretches until even the insects fall quiet. Slowly, almost reluctantly, the captain lowers his arm. Hold position, he whispers down the line. We wait. The waiting is its own battle. Muscles ache from the strain of stillness. Your eyes burn from staring into darkness that never yields. You force yourself to breathe evenly, counting each inhale and exhale like a prayer. The forest presses in, alive with imagined movement. A branch sways and every rifle tilts toward it, but no attack comes. Behind you, the wounded are carried back to the rear, where a field hospital is hastily arranged. The soft lamplight flickers through the trees, a fragile beacon amid the gloom. The faint metallic rhythm of a surgeon's tools drifts forward, clink of steel, low murmur of voices, the occasional sharp cry. You try not to listen, focusing instead on the steady weight of the rifle in your hands. At last, after what feels like an eternity, the captain gives a quiet order to fall back 20 paces to a more defensible position. The relief is almost dizzying. You move as one, the line retreating in controlled steps until the trees thin and the moonlight brightens the clearing. There, the regiment halts, forming a half moon around a cluster of rocks and fallen logs that serve as natural breastworks. The men sink behind cover, grateful for the small protection. You kneel, resting the rifle across a mossy log. Around you, whispers ripple through the ranks, brief exchanges of reassurance, muted jokes to break the tension. Samuel crouches beside you, wiping powder residue from his cheek with the back of his sleeve. They're licking their wounds, he mutters. But they'll be back. Perhaps, perhaps not. No one truly knows. In this war, battles often end not with a final decisive clash, but with a slow, grudging fade into exhaustion and dark. You glance at the stars overhead, bright and indifferent. Their cold light falls on friend and foe alike, revealing nothing of the future. The captain makes his way along the line, offering a quiet word to each cluster of men. His presence is steadying, a reminder that order still holds. He stops beside the wounded soldier from earlier, checking the hastily wrapped bandage on his arm. You'll see the morning, the captain says, voice low but certain. The man nods weakly, a faint smile breaking through his pain. Hours pass in watchful silence. The moon climbs higher, silvering the landscape. Occasional cracks of musket fire echo distantly, perhaps from another skirmish along the front, but no attack comes. The enemy, it seems, has withdrawn, at least for now. Gradually, the regiment relaxes. Some men slump against logs, rifles still within reach. Others clean their weapons by touch, fingers blackened with powder. Samuel pulls a canteen from his pack and takes a cautious sip before passing it to you. The water is lukewarm but welcome, washing the bitter taste of smoke from your throat. As the night deepens, fatigue settles over the line like a heavy blanket. You rest your chin on the rifle stock, eyes half closed but ears alert. The forest, once a cacophony of imagined threats, now hums with its natural chorus, the chirp of crickets, the whisper of leaves, the distant call of an owl. The normalcy is almost disorienting after the chaos of battle. Your thoughts drift to the day's events, the sudden volley, the charge through smoke, the clash of steel on steel. Faces flash in memory, the young recruit who fell beside you, the enemy soldier who lunged and then disappeared into the haze. You wonder who he was, what name his family will mourn, and whether someone somewhere will light a candle for him as your sister does for you. Near midnight, the captain finally gives the order to stand down. Sentries are posted along the perimeter, their silhouettes dark against the moonlit trees. The rest of you may rest, though few truly sleep. You lay your blanket on the cool ground and stretch out the rifle within easy reach. The scent of gunpowder still hangs in the air, a reminder of how swiftly the night can turn violent. Samuel settles beside you, his breathing slow but wakeful. "We held," he whispers. You nod in the dark, feeling the weight of those 2 words. Holding the line is more than surviving a fight. It is a quiet triumph of discipline of will against fear. It is the heart of soldiering to endure, to remain, when retreat or panic beckon. Above the stars shine steadily, indifferent to the struggles below. You watch them until your eyelids grow heavy, the memory of battle fading into the soft, persistent rhythm of the night. Tomorrow may bring another assault or another endless march, but for now, you have done what was asked, you have held the line, and you are still alive. The night's uneasy calm gives way to a gray mist-hung dawn. Dew slicks the grass and clings to the cuffs of your trousers as you stand to stretch aching limbs. Around you, men stir like sleepwalkers, faces pale in the half-light, their movements heavy with fatigue. The captain's voice comes low but urgent. "Ready yourselves. We move soon. No one asks where." After last night's clash, you already know the enemy hasn't gone far. A bugle's call slices the mist crisp and deliberate. You shoulder your rifle and fall into line, the echoes of yesterday's fight still humming in your bones. The regiment advances uphill through damp undergrowth boots, silent on the spongy earth. Birds scatter from the trees, their startled cries the only herald of your approach. The air tastes of wet leaves and old smoke. Then the first musket cracks sharp as a whip crack, and the forest explodes with sound. A volley answers the rebels hidden among the trees, unleashing a storm of lead and fire. Splinters of bark whip past as bullets gouge the trunks around you. Officers shout above the chaos, form line, load, and fire. The regiment obeys by instinct, the drill ingrained beyond thought. You tear a cartridge with your teeth, pour the powder, ram the ball fire into the swirling gray. The smoke thickens quickly, a choking haze that turns daylight to twilight. Shapes flicker and vanish, gray coats darting between trees, blue uniforms advancing in halting rhythm. The air is a storm of sulfur and iron. Your ears ring with each discharge until sound itself seems a distant memory. You reload by touch, the motions automatic, as though your body has taken command from your mind. A sudden shout cuts through the din artillery just before a cannon thunders, the shell shrieking overhead and bursting behind you in a concussion of earth and splintered wood. The ground trembles and a rain of dirt and pine needles falls across the line. Another explosion follows closer this time, scattering leaves and men alike. Through the smoke, you glimpse officers conferring quickly, urgency in their gestures. The lieutenant raises his sword high, its edge catching a stray beam of sunlight. His voice carries above the tumult. Fix bayonets. A ripple of movement passes through the regiment as steel flashes in the dim light. You pull the bayonet from its scabbard and lock it to the muzzle of your Springfield, the familiar click both reassuring and ominous. The rifle transforms from firearm to spear, a weapon for the intimate brutality of hand-to-hand combat. Forward, double quick. The captain's order is immediate, and the line surges like a single organism. Boots pound the earth in a thunderous cadence. Your heart slams in time with the drum of feet, each beat a warning and a command. The mist and smoke mingle into a gauzy veil through which enemy shapes loom like phantoms. The world narrows to the charge. You taste iron on your tongue, feel the rough wood of the rifle stock slick under your palms. Around you, men shout a raw chorus of fear and determination. A rebel volley erupts ahead, bullets whining past like angry hornets. The man beside you stumbles with a strangled cry, but the line presses on. The distance closes with terrifying speed. Gray figures emerge fully now, their own bayonets gleaming. For a heartbeat, you see their faces, young, grim, as human as your own. Then the lines collide. The sound is indescribable. The clang of steel meeting steel, the grunts of exertion, the sharp cries of pain. You thrust the bayonet forward, the impact jarring your shoulders. An enemy soldier swings his musket like a club. You duck, feeling the rush of air against your cheek. The ground beneath your boots is a churn of mud and trampled leaves slick with dew and the first splashes of blood. Samuel is beside you, his rifle a blur as he parries a strike. His eyes are wide but focused, every movement precise. You pivot with him, instinct overriding thought. Another Confederate lunges from the smoke, and you meet him with a desperate shove of your bayonet. The blade catches on fabric and bone. You wrench it free, the motion both violent and sickening. All around the regiment becomes a maelstrom of close combat. Muskets fire at near point-blank range, muzzle flashes blinding in the gloom. Men grapple rifles turned into clubs, knives flashing briefly before disappearing into the melee. The acrid stench of powder mingles with the copper tang of blood and the raw animal scent of sweat and fear. Time loses meaning. Each moment is a fragment, the heavy thud of a rifle butt against a tree, the sharp gasp of a wounded man, the eerie stillness in a Confederate soldier's eyes as he falls. You are no longer an observer, but a single pulse in the storm, your own survival bound to the rhythm of thrust and parry. Somewhere to your left, a Union flag dips and then rises again, its colors dulled by smoke. The sight steadies you, a reminder of the line you must hold. The captain's voice carries above the chaos. Push them back. Keep the pressure. The order is barely audible, but its intent is clear. You press forward, each step a contest of will. Gradually, the enemy line begins to waver. The rebels give ground, retreating step by grudging step. Their volleys grow ragged. Their shouts lose cohesion. You sense the shift before you see it, the subtle loosening of their formation. The captain seizes the moment, bellowing for an advance. The regiment surges once more, driving into the thinning resistance. Then, almost without warning, the gray line breaks. Confederate soldiers slip back through the trees, some stumbling, others running in full retreat. A few turn to fire desperate shots before disappearing into the woods. The din of battle fades to scattered cracks of musketry and the heavy breathing of exhausted men. You lower your rifle slowly, the bayonet's tip slick and dark. The forest is eerily quiet save for the groans of the wounded and the rustle of wind through scorched leaves. Smoke lingers in heavy curtains, glowing faintly in the pale morning light. The enemy is gone for now. Around you, men collapse to their knees, chests heaving. Some weep openly, the adrenaline of combat draining into sudden shuddering relief. Others move among the fallen, searching for friends or offering canteens to the injured. Samuel leans on his rifle, sweat streaking his soot-darkened face. His eyes meet yours with a wordless question, "We're alive." How? Officers call for a regroup, their voices hoarse but firm. "Hold this ground," the captain orders, gesturing to a shallow rise that offers a defensible position. No pursuit. Form ranks. Slowly, the regiment reforms a battered but unbroken line. As you wipe the bayonet clean with a torn scrap of cloth, the reality of what has passed begins to settle. You recall flashes of faces, both Union blue and Confederate gray, moments of terror and instinct that now blur into a single surreal memory. Your hands tremble despite your efforts to steady them. The wounded are gathered near a cluster of rocks where the surgeon waits, his apron already stained. Cries of pain punctuate the stillness as he works with grim efficiency, sawing through bone when amputation is the only option. Chloroform is scarce. Some men endure the knife awake, their teeth clenched on leather straps. You force yourself not to look too long, though the sounds are impossible to ignore. A bugle sounds a low, mournful call, signaling both victory and warning. The battle is won but not finished. The enemy may regroup beyond the ridge. You sink to the ground beside Samuel, back against a tree, heart still hammering. He offers a canteen and you drink gratefully, the water warm but life itself in your throat. Around you, the forest bears silent witness to the clash. Trees splintered by shot earth, churned by boot and blood. A haze of smoke that turns the rising sun to a dull orange disk. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the rough bark press into your spine. The bayonet charge is over, but its echoes will follow you long after the smoke clears. The charge has ended, but the war's cruelest work has only begun. As the smoke thins and the shouts of pursuit fade into a ragged silence, the battlefield becomes an open wound. The ground is littered with torn packs, splintered muskets, and the still forms of men, blue and gray alike, strewn across the churned earth like discarded rag dolls. A coppery tang hangs in the air, mingling with the acrid bite of spent powder and the damp scent of trampled leaves. The sun, rising pale through drifting smoke, bathes the scene in a cold, indifferent light. The wounded cry out for water, for help, for someone, anyone to find them. Their voices rise in a grim chorus that echoes through the trees, a sound at once human and otherworldly. You and Samuel move among them, guided by instinct and the quiet orders of officers who now speak not of tactics but of mercy. Together you lift a soldier whose leg is mangled beyond recognition, his face gray with shock. His eyes meet yours for a fleeting second, pleading grateful, terrified, before he lapses into unconsciousness. A makeshift field hospital is established on a low hill behind the line where a cluster of boulders offers meager shelter from the wind. The surgeon's sleeves rolled to the elbow works by the thin light of lanterns hung from branches. His apron is already stained a deep crimson, his face drawn with exhaustion yet set with grim purpose. Instruments, bone saws, forceps, scalpels glint coldly on a wooden table, hastily scrubbed but never truly clean. There is no time for ceremony. The wounded arrive in a steady stream, men borne on stretchers, carried in arms or staggering under their own power, with blood-soaked trousers and distant stares. You help where you can, fetching water from a nearby stream, holding a lantern as the surgeon bends over his work. The smell is overwhelming, blood and sweat, the sharp sting of alcohol, the sickly, sweet odor of infection already setting in. You breathe through your mouth but cannot escape it. A young soldier lies on the table, his face barely more than a boy's. A musket ball has shattered his thigh. The surgeon examines the wound with a practiced eye, then glances at his assistant. Amputation, he says simply. Chloroform is scarce. A few drops on a rag will have to suffice. The boy bites down on a leather strap as the saw begins its harsh, rhythmic rasp. The sound is unmistakable steel against bone, a slow, deliberate tearing. You force yourself to hold the lantern steady, though every muscle in your body wants to flee. The boy moans, once then goes limp. Whether from the chloroform or blessed unconsciousness, you cannot tell. The surgeon works quickly, binding the stump with linen and a crude splint. Next he calls, and another soldier is lifted onto the table before the first can be carried away. There is no time to grieve, no space for fear. The work must continue. Outside the tented area, the lightly wounded sit in small clusters, their faces pale in the morning light. Some cradle broken arms. Others press cloths to shallow cuts. They speak in low voices, sharing canteens and bits of hardtack, their eyes fixed on the distant tree line, as if expecting the enemy to return at any moment. A chaplain moves among them, offering prayers and quiet comfort, his Bible tucked beneath one arm, his voice a steady murmur in the chaos. You fetch more water, the cold stream biting at your hands. The simple act of filling a bucket feels almost sacred, each drop a defiance of death. Returning to the hill, you pass a group of men digging shallow graves, their shovels striking the stony soil with dull, unrelenting thuds. The sound carries across the field, a grim metronome to the surgeon's saw. Samuel joins you, his face pale but determined. He carries a stack of bloodied bandages to be boiled for reuse. There are never enough clean ones. It doesn't seem to end, he says quietly, his eyes fixed on the endless line of wounded. You nod, unable to find words. In this place, language feels inadequate. As the sun climbs higher, its warmth does little to dispel the chill that grips the hill. Flies begin to gather, drawn by the smell of blood. The surgeon waves them away impatiently as he bends over yet another patient. A private with a shattered arm clenches his jaw as the bone is set and splinted. Nearby, a man with a chest wound coughs weakly crimson froth, staining his lips. The chaplain kneels beside him, whispering prayers as the life ebbs slowly from his body. You and Samuel move from task to task, steadying a stretcher, offering water to parched lips, holding down a soldier who thrashes in fever. Time blurs into a relentless cycle of need and response, the boundaries between hours dissolving in the press of suffering. The groans of the injured become a constant background, a low tide of pain that seeps into your bones. At one point, you pause to wipe sweat from your brow, the sleeve of your jacket streaked with blood, not your own. Your gaze drifts to the far side of the clearing, where the dead are laid out in neat rows, their faces covered with scraps of cloth. Some are men you passed on the march only yesterday, their voices still fresh in memory. The sight is both numbing and piercing, a reminder of how swiftly life can be unstitched. In a rare quiet moment, Samuel sinks onto a log beside you, his shoulders sagging. Back home, he says, voice barely above a whisper, I thought battles were about bravery. Muskets and flags. Nobody told me about this. His eyes search yours, seeking an answer you cannot give. Maybe this is bravery, you say after a pause. Staying, helping, enduring. The words feel thin, but they are all you have. He nods slowly, staring at the surgeon's lantern-lit silhouette. Enduring, he repeats as if testing the weight of the word. The afternoon stretches on, each hour marked only by the sun's slow arc and the steady labor of the living. The surgeon works until his hands tremble, pausing only to wipe his brow and swallow a mouthful of tepid water. His face is a mask of fatigue and grim resolve. The chaplain continues his rounds, offering prayers for the dying and solace for the living. You and Samuel keep moving, driven by a quiet determination that surprises you both. When at last, the flow of wounded slows, an uneasy stillness settles over the hill. The surgeon steps back from the table, his apron dark with dried blood. He removes his spectacles and rubs his eyes, the lines of exhaustion etched deep. Around him, the survivors rest where they can, some drifting into uneasy sleep, others staring blankly at nothing. The sun dips toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the field. Smoke from distant fires curls upward, tinted gold in the fading light. The air is heavy with the day's grim work, the metallic scent of blood, the faint sweetness of decay, the lingering tang of powder. You stand with Samuel at the edge of the clearing, looking out over the makeshift graves and the silent forms within them. For a moment, the enormity of it presses down the fragility of flesh, the random mercy of survival, the endless cost of war measured not in victories, but in lives quietly extinguished. You breathe in the cool evening air, the scent of pine and distant rain, promising a brief cleansing reprieve. Samuel places a hand on your shoulder, his grip firm and steady. No words pass between you. None are needed. Together you watch as the first stars appear, their cold light falling on the field hospital, on the rows of the fallen, on the weary men who will march again tomorrow. The day's carnage is complete, but the war endures, indifferent to the suffering it leaves behind. The evening air cools as the last glow of sun fades behind the trees, washing the battlefield in deep indigo. Smoke from the cook fires drifts in low, sweet ribbons, softening the harsh scents of blood and gunpowder that still cling to everything. You sit on a fallen log beside Samuel, the two of you silent at first, listening to the low murmur of men settling for the night. Every sound, the scrape of a tin cup, the crackle of a dying fire, feels both ordinary and extraordinary after the day's chaos. Around you, soldiers move like weary ghosts. Some clean their rifles by firelight hands, blackened with powder but steady as if clinging to the comfort of routine. Others crouch in quiet clusters, sharing a canteen or a whispered memory of home. A few wander among the rows of the fallen heads, bowed, their faces unreadable in the flickering light. The chaplain moves steadily from group to group, offering prayers or simply a gentle presence, his Bible tucked under one arm. You cradle your own tin cup of tepid coffee, savoring its bitter warmth. The taste is rough, but it cuts through the metallic tang that lingers in your mouth. Across the fire, Samuel sharpens his bayonet with slow, deliberate strokes, the rasp of steel against stone almost soothing. After a long silence, he glances up. I keep thinking about that boy on the table, he says quietly, his voice carrying the weight of what you both witnessed, the one who bit down on the strap. You nod, the image of the young soldier flashing vivid and unbidden, his pale face, the quick rise and fall of his chest the surgeon saw. "I'll hear that sound for a long time." You reply, your own voice a rasp. Samuel stares into the fire, his eyes reflecting its shifting glow. "My Mary will never know this," he murmurs. "Not really. How could she?" "Maybe that's mercy, you say. Maybe no one back home should ever know." He considers this for a moment, then gives a small, almost imperceptible nod. The fire pops softly, sending a spray of sparks into the dark. Nearby, young Davis sits cross-legged with a small group of recruits, his face illuminated by the glow of a lantern. He listens intently as a grizzled veteran recounts a tale from the Peninsula Campaign, an ambush survived only through sheer luck and the steady aim of a single marksman. Davis clutches a letter in his hand, the edges frayed from repeated reading. When he notices your gaze, he lifts it slightly in silent explanation. "From my mother," he says with a shy smile. "She tells me the lilacs are blooming." For a heartbeat, the word lilacs carries you far from the smoky clearing to a world of spring air and quiet gardens. You picture the small flowers swaying in a gentle breeze, their scent bright and sweet. The memory is almost painful in its beauty. "That's a good thing to hold on to," you tell him, and he nods, eyes shining. The conversation drifts to the small comforts of home, the taste of fresh bread, the feel of sun-warmed earth under bare feet, the sound of church bells on a Sunday morning. Each memory is offered like a gift, a fragile link to a life beyond the war. The stories weave through the campfire smoke, binding you together in a tapestry of shared longing. As darkness deepens, a soft tune rises from the far side of camp, a harmonica, slow and plaintive. The melody floats over the clearing like a prayer, carrying with it the ache of homesickness and the quiet strength of survival. Conversations fade as men listen, some with eyes closed, others staring into the star-pricked sky. The music needs no words. It speaks to the part of each soldier that still remembers a world untouched by war. Samuel leans back against the log, eyes half closed, and begins to hum along a low, steady sound that vibrates in your chest. You find yourself joining in the simple harmony, a balm for the day's wounds. For a moment, you are not soldiers, but brothers, bound by something deeper than duty, a shared recognition of life's fragile sweetness. After the song fades, the chaplain approaches your fire, his face gentle in the lantern light. "Evening," he says softly, settling onto the log beside you. He offers a brief prayer of thanks for survival, his words simple and sincere. "Tonight you have endured," he concludes. "That is no small victory." Heads bow in quiet assent, the silence that follows as profound as any sermon. When the chaplain moves on, Samuel reaches into his haversack and produces a small wooden whistle, the one he carved for his daughter on a quieter night. He turns it in his hands, the grain catching the firelight. "I want her to hear it," he says, "to know I thought of her even here." He lifts it to his lips and plays a single soft note. The sound is thin but clear, threading through the camp like a promise. Men nearby glance up, their faces softening. A few smile. One offers a quiet amen. The hours slip by. One by one, soldiers drift to their blankets, some murmuring prayers, others simply succumbing to exhaustion. The campfire burns lower, its glow fading to embers. You remain awake, staring at the sky where the Milky Way spills like a river of light. Each star feels both impossibly distant and intimately close, a silent witness to your endurance. Samuel breaks the silence with a question that hangs heavy in the night air. "Do you think we'll ever be the same after this?" You search for an answer, watching the slow drift of a shooting star across the velvet sky. "No," you admit finally. "But maybe we're not meant to be. Maybe surviving changes you, and that's the point." He exhales a long, quiet breath. "Then let's make sure it changes us for the better." You nod, feeling the truth of his words settle deep in your chest. The war has stripped life to its barest elements: friendship, endurance, the will to see another sunrise. These are the things that will remain when the smoke clears. A sudden breeze stirs the embers, sending a final spray of sparks upward. The faint scent of pine and cooling earth fills the air. You draw your blanket tighter and lie back, the ground firm and familiar beneath you. The whistle rests between Samuel's hands as he drifts into sleep, its small promise of home glowing faintly in the starlight. In the quiet that follows, you reflect on the day's grim lessons. Heroism is not the grand charge or the clash of steel. It is the simple act of staying, of bearing witness, of holding fast when fear and fatigue press in. It is the strength found in shared silence, in the steady presence of a comrade, in the soft music of a wooden whistle carried across miles of darkness. You close your eyes, listening to the gentle chorus of sleeping men, to the whisper of wind through the trees, to the heartbeat of a world that continues, despite the war's relentless toll. Tomorrow will bring new orders, new marches, perhaps new battles. But tonight, you rest in the fragile peace of brotherhood, knowing that endurance itself is victory. A thin gray light seeps through the eastern trees, smudging the stars and brushing the camp with the first color of morning. You wake to the cold kiss of dew on your face and the faint resinous smell of pine drifting from the forest. The fire beside you has burned a soft ash. Only a few orange coals pulse weakly like distant beacons. Around you, men stir under blankets, their movement slow and deliberate, as if the weight of yesterday still presses on every muscle. For a moment, you lie still listening. The world is hushed, but not silent. A low breeze whispers through the branches, carrying the distant rush of a creek. A lone bird trills tentative, as if testing the fragile calm. You focus on these small sounds, letting them root you in the present before the duties of the day reclaim you. Samuel shifts nearby, rubbing sleep from his eyes. The wooden whistle he carved for his daughter rests near his hand, a small, silent promise of home. He meets your gaze and offers a faint smile, one that acknowledges both exhaustion and the quiet triumph of survival. "Still here," he says, voice rough with sleep. "Still here," you echo. The words feel like an oath. A bugle call drifts across the clearing, low and steady, signaling reveille. Its notes curl through the mist, gentle yet insistent, pulling the regiment from slumber. Men sit up, stretch, and begin the slow ritual of packing. Blankets are rolled, rifles checked, canteens tightened. The rhythm is familiar, comforting in its predictability. After the chaos of battle and the grim labor of the field hospital, these ordinary motions feel almost sacred. You stand brushing damp grass from your coat. Your body protests with stiff aches the legacy of yesterday's charge, but the pain is oddly reassuring. It is proof that you endured. Around you, soldiers speak in murmurs, their voices carrying fragments of dreams, prayers, and plans for letters home. Davis, the young recruit, carefully folds his mother's letter and tucks it into his breast pocket. His eyes, though rimmed with fatigue, hold a steadiness born of the previous night's trial. Breakfast is spare hardtack softened in lukewarm coffee, a sliver of salt pork for those fortunate enough to have some left. The bitter taste anchors you to the moment, a small comfort against the vast uncertainty of the road ahead. Samuel sits beside you, sipping from his tin cup. "Think they'll move us today?" he asks. Always you reply, and he chuckles softly, the sound carrying a note of weary acceptance. "Orders will come soon. They always do." Whether it is to march, to dig entrenchments, or to face the enemy again, the pattern is unchanging. The war moves forward, indifferent to personal exhaustion or private grief. As the sun climbs, the mist thins to reveal the scars of yesterday. Beyond the camp, the battlefield lies quiet but not at peace. Trees stand splintered by artillery, their bark shredded and blackened. Dark stains mar the earth where men fell. From a distance, burial teams move methodically, shovels flashing in the pale light. Their steady labor is a silent testament to the cost of the previous day. You look away, the image searing yet already familiar. A courier arrives on horseback, his uniform streaked with mud, and confers briefly with the captain. Though you cannot hear their words, the set of the captain's shoulders tells you enough there will be another march. The rumor spreads quickly, but without complaint. The men begin tightening straps and adjusting packs, the quiet efficiency of veterans who know that hesitation invites chaos. Before the column forms, the chaplain gathers those who will listen. His voice carries a calm strength as he offers a prayer for the fallen and for those who march on. May endurance be your shield, he says, his eyes sweeping the weary faces. And may you find courage in each other as you have through the night. Heads bow in a ripple of silent reverence. You feel Samuel's shoulder brush yours, a subtle reminder that you are not alone. When the order finally comes, fall in, you rise with the rest, slinging your haversack and adjusting the blanket roll across your chest. The familiar weight settles on your shoulders like an old companion. You take your place in the line, the rhythm of preparation as ingrained as breathing. The drums begin their slow tattoo, a heartbeat for the coming miles. As the regiment steps off, the morning sun breaks fully over the horizon, bathing the forest in a soft gold. Dew sparkles on the grass, each droplet a tiny star. You breathe deeply, the air cool and clean, tinged with the faint sweetness of pine and the distant smoke of smoldering fires. The world feels both new and ancient, scarred by yesterday, yet brimming with the quiet insistence of life. The road winds through a landscape washed fresh by dawn. Birds flit between branches, their songs bright against the muted tramp of boots. Civilian homesteads appear intermittently, a farmhouse with shutters drawn tight, a field of corn glistening with dew, a lone dog watching silently from a porch. You wonder what these people think as the army passes, whether they feel fear, resentment, or a cautious hope that the conflict might soon end. The column moves with steady purpose, the men silent but alert. Some march with heads bowed, lost in private thought. Others gaze at the horizon where the road disappears into the trees. You keep step with Samuel, the two of you exchanging only occasional glances. Words feel unnecessary. The bond forged in smoke and blood speaks more eloquently than conversation. As miles pass beneath your boots, the memories of battle drift like distant echoes. The clang of bayonets, the acrid bite of powder, the cries of the wounded. They are not gone. You doubt they ever will be, but they settle into a quieter place within you, no longer raw, no longer overwhelming. In their stead grows a different understanding. Survival is its own kind of victory. Not the heroic triumph of drums and banners, but the quiet, steadfast triumph of enduring. Near midday, the regiment halts for a brief rest at the edge of a wide meadow. The grass ripples in a gentle breeze, the scent of wildflowers riding the air. You sit with Samuel under the shade of a sprawling oak, sharing a canteen of warm water. He pulls the wooden whistle from his pocket and turns it in his hands. For Mary, he says simply, then raises it to his lips. A soft, clear note drifts across the meadow carried on the wind. The sound is fragile, yet persistent like hope itself. A few men nearby pause to listen. One smiles, another closes his eyes, perhaps remembering a child of his own. The whistle's song fades into the hum of insects and the distant roll of drums calling the regiment forward once more. You rise, slinging your pack, and fall back into formation. The road stretches ahead, endless and unknowable, yet you march with a steadier heart, buoyed by the small certainties, the warmth of the sun on your back, the rhythmic crunch of boots on earth, the quiet strength of friendship beside you. As the column moves on, you realize that survival is not just the absence of death. It is the presence of purpose, of connection, of the will to see another dawn and another after that. Each step you take is a silent declaration you remain. You endure, and in enduring, you honor all who cannot. The trees ahead sway gently in the breeze, their leaves catching the light like coins of green fire. Beyond them lies another day of marching, another night of watchful sleep, another test of the body and spirit. But for now, under the brightening sky, you walk forward with the quiet certainty that to live to witness, to carry the memory of those lost, that is victory enough.